Welcome. You're listening or watching to another episode of Whistlekick Martial Arts Radio. And my name is Andrew Adams, and I'm joined by Sifu Stephen Watson. How are you today?
Yay! Hello.
Yay! Well, we're here to just have some fun, but before we get there, uh, although I don't know if it's possible to have more fun, we're going to have so much fun. I can't even get into it. But we have to put that on pause because I want to make sure all of our listeners and watchers, if you're watching us on YouTube, certainly if you are, hit like and subscribe. We always want to share this with other friends as well. But I want to make sure that you know all the stuff that we do at Whistlekick. Obviously, we make up this podcast. We sell apparel. We sell gear. We sell books. We host events throughout the country. There is so much stuff that we have available, and you can find it all at whistlekick.com. Now, this show, the podcast itself, has its own website, whistlekickmartialartsradio.com, and you can go there to find show notes and transcripts and extra photos. And you'll also find at the very top a new button that says subscribe. We have
Yeah.
a new newsletter that is specific for martial arts radio, and you'll get notified when episodes come out. First thing you'll do is you get a free book. But we're going to start throwing out some behind the scenes things. And so that's where you're going to want to be to get everything that we do for martial arts radio. So, Sifu, I definitely detect a little rasp in your voice today.
Yeah, I'm recovering from an illness, which is quite an unusual circumstance for me, but it's what happened. And I can say that it sounds pretty ragged, but I'm not in any pain or discomfort. It just sounds. Uh, it's probably about 80% better than yesterday. Yesterday was just a tiny whisper, and it was like that for about a week. So this is my podcast best voice.
It's deeper, it's raspier. It would be good for like a whistle kick after dark
Whistle
episode.
kick late night for all you black belts in the black of night.
So we are here to just hang out. So I was telling you before we started recording that my plan was to have no plan, to just have some martial musings, just sit down and talk martial arts. And you are someone with whom we've done this in the past, whether it's been recorded or not. And I thought,
Mhm.
you know what, let's get together and hang out. And we often think alike, as is shown by the fact that we're both wearing the same T-shirt.
We certainly are.
So that was my plan. My plan was to have no plan.
Okay. Um, so why don't I start, since there's
Sure.
no plan, with
Yeah, why not?
asking you a question?
Love it.
What is a good reason to take a break from the martial arts?
Oh, that is there can be many.
Uh-huh.
I have one right now. I had
Your
surgery on my ankle.
ankle.
And one could make the argument that I've taken a break from physical training, but I
Yeah.
haven't necessarily taken a break from martial arts. I'm still listening to other martial arts podcasts, not just Whistlekick, but
Yeah.
other podcasts as well. So I am doing other martial things, but I'm certainly, in the conventional sense, I've taken a break from training.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that we allow our bodies to heal. Obviously my example is fairly I don't want to say serious, but like I had surgery.
It's fairly straightforward too.
Yeah,
Like, you're
yeah,
gonna have surgery, you're gonna be out for 6 weeks or whatever they say, and that
yep.
yeah, yeah.
And so it was pretty cut and dry. Like, I could not put any weight on my foot for 6 weeks. And
Right.
I'm now able to walk, in air quotes, walk. I need a cane. I have to have a special boot on. I'm certainly not fully 100% mobile, and I probably won't be 100% for another
Right.
few months at
Yeah.
least.
I
So
kind
I
of
mean,
I
that's
kind
certainly
of
one.
think that I mean, certainly, my question is, when do you take a break? And we could start with, well, what counts as a break? And,
Sure.
like if you're listening to podcasts and writing about it and stretching your wrists while you're in the boot, is that a break or is it? I kind of feel like among students, let's say, we have what we might be considered, what we might consider to be a student, and then we have what we might consider to be a martial artist.
Mm.
Like,
Yeah, fair.
and the martial artists are fewer and farther between.
Hmm.
It's what I expect everybody to be. I expect them all to fall in love with it and devote their lives like me. But then the reality is, oh no, I'm a bit of a geek for this, and I'm
Hmm.
going to be a rarity in the mix, right? Like you. But I think for the martial artist, they can't stop.
Mm.
Right. It will look different. You're in surgery. And so now you're exploring meditation and stretching and reading some biographies of martial artists and or watching a class and not participating physically.
Hmm.
And I think for the person who's not a martial artist, but there are students, they're in the mix,
Yep.
stopping or taking a break is as natural as it would be unnatural for me to stop.
Yeah.
Like I can't, if I have a day off, right? If I have a day off, I wake up, I get the bathroom, take a shower, stretch out, and have my coffee. And then I'm just like, I wish a student was here. Like I wish I had a class I can go to right now. Like
Yep.
oh, I want to write this. I got to get this off my chest. Or let me work on that. I got to, and and then the whole day goes by, and that's my day off.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know, I'm just filled with, oh, there's so much to test and to explore and to um, return to and sort of start practicing again or wrestle with or do some more scholarly research on or whatever. Um, and then and I'm not unhappy, right? I recognize that somebody looking at me from the outside will think, well, you're not really doing the day off that you thought you'd have a picnic
Mm.
and go to the
Yeah, yeah.
movies. And I'm like, I don't know, this it's still, it feels like exactly how I'm supposed to live my life.
Hmm.
This is what's most important. Um, so so I'm glad to hear your thoughts on that taking a break. I think that we often hear, as teachers, we hear the idea of taking a break and we marshal our resources to argue against it. Like, I don't
Yes.
want to lose a student. Like, and
Hmm.
I give you all the arguments and describe all the stories of past teachers who stopped and never returned. And so I can feel that I'm ready to make those arguments. But I think there's probably wisdom in the taking a break too. I just don't know that that would be for me. For
Sure.
me, it wouldn't be taking a break. It would just be changing how I train, like you're describing for yourself.
Yeah. I would say I think the most common reason that students, so we're going to talk students, and we'll take people like you and I out of,
Yeah,
and
fair.
and likely probably a lot of our listenership, right? We'll take them out for a second. But for students, I think the most common reason to take a break usually has to do with either A, going through something incredibly stressful,
Yeah.
or time management. And it could be
Yes.
they just don't have the time. I mean, I remember when I was managing a I used to manage a very high-end chocolate factory.
Yeah.
uh, I didn't manage the factory, I managed the shipping
The
department.
shipping, I remember.
But I worked normally during the regular time of the year. I'd work 40-45 hours a week. But when it came to Christmas time, I was working 80 plus hours a week.
Right.
And could I have found an hour in a day to get some work training in? I
Yeah.
could, but I was exhausted. I was
Wiped out.
wiped out. And
Yeah.
so, that was one example for me, but I think just in general, either someone doesn't have they don't have the time. I'm putting that in air quotes because,
Sure.
you know, they are prioritizing something else more. Um,
Right.
or, um, they're going through something really, really stressful.
Well, let's look at that prioritization. The Christmas season with chocolates, right? Um, you had a choice to make.
Mhm.
And the choice was busy season, devote myself to the career, make the overtime, that sort of, this is when the money is there, so it's a conscious decision to relax the training or pull back
Mhm.
for that reason.
And
So
it was
that's,
even more so than that. I was salaried. I didn't make any extra money
uh-huh,
working those extra hours, but if I didn't work those hours, I would have lost my job.
right,
So
right,
the
right.
priority for me was I need to keep my job.
Right. And I think what's important is that people are conscious about those decisions
Mm.
and that they don't um, sort of blame them on something else, external circumstances.
Yeah,
Somebody made me, somebody expected me. And it's like, no, no, you made this choice given your information. And I'm not faulting you for the choice. I want you to own it's your choice. And that
sure.
might have happened for you every Christmas season. You made that same choice and that's fine. But you could have for example, planned an hour 3 times a week to practice at home. But maybe the second year you realized even if I plan that, by the time I get home and I have an hour, I just collapse,
Yep,
or I need
yep.
to eat something, and the time is gone. And then you're better equipped to make those time management decisions next time,
Mhm.
even if they're not different decisions. Um, Sometimes something happens to us, somebody falls sick, or their job sort of changes, you have to move out of state, or there's a big tumult in your family and there's a divorce or something like that, and it's reasonable that people will have to pull back from training or stop or pause. But even then, I like it to be a more conscious decision and say,
Mm.
How do I start to look forward to training again, even
Yep,
though the short term looks really chaotic and I can't see around the bend, which is fine. How do I maintain some training at home? How
yeah,
do I think about finding a new teacher when I move to Kansas or something?
yep.
All that stuff is there. Too often, people, I think, kind of blame the circumstances, which are difficult and sudden and tragic and life altering. And it sort of becomes this excuse to stop training.
Mhm.
And sometimes all people need is one more little excuse, and the
Exactly.
scale tips and now they don't train. There's somebody who once did karate when they were in high school, and we
Mhm.
know a lot of people who they did
Yep.
karate when they're a kid, and that's great, but man, can you try and stay with it
Yeah, yeah.
in
I've
in yeah, please.
I've definitely had conversations with students, and not just martial arts students, drumming students as well,
Yeah,
who have said they need to take a break or whatever. And I always am understanding, and that's fine. I certainly don't want to hold anyone against their will. I'm not going to kidnap you to keep you as a student, right?
right.
But I always try and impress upon them doing something is better than doing nothing,
Yes,
regardless of what that something is.
yes.
And sometimes that's something like I had a martial arts student that was needed to take a break. He had some personal health things going on with his family, and I gave him. I said, "Okay, no problem." Like you, he said, I should only be a couple months." I said, "Okay, no problem, but here's what I would like for you to do, and you don't have to.
during
This is
the during those few
your choice
months.
during those few months.
Yeah,
Uh, I'm going to send you a podcast that I would like you to listen to."
great.
And it was like it was every week. Here's one podcast that I think you might get
Oh
something out of, and
really? That's
maybe
cool.
you won't. Maybe you won't. Maybe you'll get nothing out of it. But and you don't have to listen to it. I can't force you to. But at least he was engaged in some sort of something with the school, right? So he
Yeah,
got an email from me every week with here's something that I can do this week. And he had a whole week to work on it, and podcast was about an hour or something like that.
yeah,
um but that kept them engaged to some degree, and coming back was a lot easier for them because they had stayed in touch. And
yes, yes.
I've done the same sort of thing with drummers who have said, I need to just take a break from the band. Right? They play in a
Yeah,
band, and they're deciding they're going to take some time off. I said, you know what? I get it. Like, there's a lot going on. You don't have time to do parades, and you don't have
yep,
time to come to practice, and all of these. Okay, no problem. But how about just to keep your hands going?
Right.
once a week, send me a recording of you playing this tune. It will
So
take you
good.
it'll take you 3 minutes, right? three
So
minutes
good.
once a week. Send me the recording, and you know what? I'll critique it. I'll take 5 minutes out of my day. I'll take 3 minutes to listen to it, and I'll take 2 minutes to send you a message back saying,
Yes.
this is what you did really well. This is what you can do better. It doesn't really cost me anything other than the 5-10 minutes, maybe. I certainly didn't charge them for it, but it kept their hands moving, it kept their brains
Yes.
thinking about drumming. And so you can do the same sort of thing with a student who decides to take some time off.
Yeah. I One of the things that I do, well, in the first case, what I was going to say is that in I've been doing this for like 40 years or something, and in the digital era, it is so possible for me to stay in touch with students who haven't studied with me for 30 years.
Yep.
And I can text them or LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever it might be.
Hmm.
And I will often just, I think of them, I'll send them a little cartoon or a meme, or I'll just check in like, hey, how you doing? Or hey, here's a picture I found from way back in the, and on some level it's marketing, right? It's
Sure.
like reminding them, and at some point when they're ready to come back or their granddaughter is, they're more connected to me and it's easier, and I'm
Mm,
aware that that's part of what I'm doing. The other part is just being a human. They're people I care about, and
sure.
it's nice to stay connected, but I probably send 30 a day,
Hmm.
a message of some kind to somebody. And sometimes it's kind of deep, and sometimes it's just a general, how are you and your wife doing? And sometimes it's, I thought of you, here's a funny thing, but it's just trying to stay connected. Um, and I think that's a wonderful aspect of the digital era. And I know that I'm consciously using it as this sort of extension of my business,
Hmm.
but it feels very human. It's
Yeah.
not quite the same as just sending out a marketing email.
Well,
Um,
and I think I haven't done any research on this, but I feel like one of the greatest fears in life for everyone is the fear of not being accepted. And when you leave a school or you stop
yeah.
drumming or you stop doing whatever, the longer you're away, the harder it is to convince your brain that you're going to be accepted, right?
Yes.
That you're allowed to come back. And
Yes.
those little messages do nothing more than just let them know that you're staying in touch with them and it's okay to
Yes.
come back. When I'm ready to come back, like it's a good thing, and I will be accepted.
One of the hardest things for me as a teacher, who's been doing it for decades, is you'll be in the grocery store and you'll round the corner and you'll see a student from 15 years ago.
Hmm.
And there's going to be a little hello, okay, good to see you. You look healthy or whatever. But then I can sense that they feel ashamed or awkward or something.
Yep.
And I want to just smother that and be like, no, no, I'm just saying hi. I'm not going to remind you class is Wednesday night or slip you a coupon. I'm just a human being. Great to see you. You know where I am. But
Yep.
I could see that they feel like that might happen and they feel bad about how they left.
Mm,
And I can't help that. I can't fix it.
yeah.
I can just say, hey, you know me. I'm not the guy that's going to say, oh, look at you. You look healthy enough to, pick up that case of water. Why aren't you training? I'm not going to do that. I'm not even thinking that.
Mm,
So that's a tough thing. Something I started doing, I think 2 years ago. I mean, maybe around COVID. Maybe, yeah, that sounds about right. Maybe 3 years. I started. You'll see a student ready to step back, which in my mind I catastrophize it, and I think it's I will never see them again, and everybody else will leave. Like
mm,
that's what goes through my brain. But I know it's just they're moving on for their job changed, whatever it is, or they have a new kid, something, and and I wanted to create a bridge between the 3 times a week coming to class, training, doing homework, and then maybe I see you again in 10 years when you find your way back. So I created like a check-in class that's a paid online class,
Hmm.
but it's very cheap and there's no warm up. It's just click Zoom and you're ready to move. I'm going to spend 30 minutes with you. Show me what you're doing. I'll give you a little feedback, a little correction. We'll have a little bit of checking in.
Yep.
And we can do that every 2 months, every month, 3 times a year. So to me, it was trying to create some physical continuation that's very low um, sort of cost, not just money, but time and
Hmm.
uniform and travel and all that. Just let me see you practice something you're doing. I'll give you a little corrections, just keep you moving. But I'm not going to do all the warm ups and every stretch and every go. It's just really locked into that. And that feels like it's been a pretty good option for a few students that it certainly helps in terms of cash flow because there's a little bit coming from them. But mostly it's not just the idea of us being connected. They are still training
Yeah,
and we're
they're
just
staying
finding like a
engaged.
different way to do it that they can fit into their lives.
Yep, yep, and they're staying engaged.
Yeah, and that's worked for a few students that have moved out of state. So that's their whole reason. They can't physically be here. Um, when we were just circling back here, when we were talking about reasons that people might step back or separate themselves from training or stop training, I was thinking one of the reasons that they do it is not so much that there's an injury or like a life change, job or family, but they've they find themselves at a plateau.
Mm. Yep.
And it's not necessarily conscious, but they're not challenged or driven or rewarded or whatever it is as frequently as they might have expected or gotten used to. Um, and I think that's one of the reasons, and I think that might go unmentioned or it might be an unconscious thing.
Mm.
For the teacher, it might be hard to notice, and for the student, it might be hard to notice, and yet they drift apart. And I think that would be a helpful thing to kind of check in. Like, have you been sort of stuck
Mm.
for, I don't know how long is, but enough that it's a plateau, not a mountain?
Sure.
And does that sort of stop meeting your satisfaction need in terms of training? And
Yeah.
meanwhile, there's something else in the world offering that,
Hmm.
the
And I
pickleball or whatever.
Yeah, and I've seen that often most of the listeners will know my main background in training is in Okinawan styles of karate. So for us it'd be brown belt,
And
and
that
you know we
translates as the best style in Japanese. I think
no,
Okinawan
no,
is the best
definitely does
style.
not.
I'm pretty sure.
But we would call it the brown belt blues, where
Yes,
the number of students that would get to brown belt, which for those that aren't in the know is the belt
right
right
at the
before
end.
black
Yep.
belt, and they stop training because they plateau and they feel like getting to the next level is going to be so much they're not getting there fast enough. And there's
Yes.
a great quote that I remember from an interview of on whistlekick. I couldn't tell you who it was that said it, but I loved it, and it was, it's better to look like a brown belt, it's better to be a brown belt that looks like a black belt than to be a black belt that looks like a brown belt. And that I understand that philosophy and I like it. I But the
Right.
problem is, if that brown belt looks like a black belt for too long, they feel like they've plateaued. That You're right. That is a reason that they could leave.
Yeah. Yeah. And I I also see in like I wouldn't leave, but we're not always talking about like a martial artist the way I've kind of defined it
Sure.
today.
Hmm.
I wouldn't. I'm happy on a plateau. I don't care. I just want to train. But I think also this is where people they don't think that they're leaving. They're just looking to expand themselves. And this is where they find themselves picking up another art or changing schools.
Hmm.
So in their mind, the thread is that I'm still training, but you as their teacher is like, no, you left, you stopped training, you're doing, nimpo now or something. Um, and I think sometimes the plateau can serve to inspire people to look further afield to meet their training desires, I guess, which might not be bad. I don't know. I just thinking through the question of stepping back from training. Um, I think too that if you think of yourself as um, in Grand Central Terminal, let's say, so you're in a big crowd. If you step back from a given person, maybe they give you the creeps or you're just giving them room to get
Mhm.
by, whatever. They're taking a picture, you get out of it. You can't step away from any person without stepping towards other people,
Mm.
right? And so I think it can be helpful for us to, since we're on this topic of people stepping back, is to recognize that they're very likely stepping towards something else that
Mm.
might
Yep.
point to healing or growth or deepening, whether that's learning how to become a teacher in the art or learning how to run a tournament or learning how to sell martial arts, accoutrement, whatever artwork or something. um, and I think that if we can remember that the martial arts is not fully represented by me, and so when somebody pulls away from me, like my classes, my schedule, my pricing, whatever, they might very well be moving towards
Mm.
a chance to coach kids or chance to open their own school or a chance to pick up archery or whatever the things are. And I think that can be helpful to recognize that a way likely, because martial arts is so big, a way likely means towards new,
Mm.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, and I see that, and in fact that's happened to me. Like
Yeah.
I've gone through that myself.
Uh-huh.
um Stepping away from something because I was interested in something else, right? And I think most people listening or watching can relate to some degree, whether it's martial arts or not. Maybe it's something completely different. We all have hobbies that we have gotten into and aren't involved in anymore, right?
Yeah. I off topic. I think that you need to create a self-defense combo. Like I'm thinking Kempo style. The guy punches and you do 37 things, but to the rhythm of the Phil Collins drum solo.
Yep, yep. From
Yeah, done
Into the Air.
something in the air tonight is it?
Yep, yeah,
But
yeah.
like it has to be that.
Dum dum
Yeah,
dum dum
yeah.
bum bum.
However many
Yeah, yeah.
hits it is, you have to do it, and it has to be something
I'll
you
have to
do as
get
a
Craig.
demo.
I'll have to
Yeah,
get
with
Craig to help
Craig.
me with that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think that would be so much fun.
Okay, Craig, if you're listening, reach out. Let's make that happen.
Yeah, it has to happen.
That is funny.
Yeah.
Um, it is you changing subject here. You bring up music, and I was talking with a good friend last week, I think, that the number of skilled, very skilled martial artists who are also musicians is very, very high. And I find that really interesting.
I have always found that absolutely interesting. I cannot spell rhythm, so I am the furthest from musical of anybody you've met. Um, and yet I have found that the number of my students who are musicians, like perhaps symphony musicians and Juilliard and or
Hmm.
working or like very into like they're the somebody that always has a guitar and a harmonica in their car kind of thing, is far greater than the average cross section of life.
Yep.
And I'm very interested in it, but I don't have a confidence in any guess as to why that is.
Yeah, yeah. And
Well,
I'm not sure I do either. And I mean, I am a musician
yes,
myself. Um, and it's just an observation that I don't see. If you were to poll 100
right.
skilled basketball players,
Yes.
the number of them that are also skilled musicians
There's
would not.
15
Yeah,
or
but if
yeah.
you but
It's
if
100
you
martial artists. It's going to be 60 of them.
yeah, like, and I just find that really interesting, and
Yeah.
I think there's a correlation there, that just I don't know. You
My,
mentioned music, and
my
it got
guess
me to
is that
thinking
there's
about
a
that.
few things that come together to make that, but I don't know what it is. And I'm wondering if there's been a study on it. I've never tried to look it up. Mostly, I feel a great longing and a great maybe self disappointment, or if I could redo things, here's some, that kind of thought,
Hmm.
where I feel like I'm my whole martial arts career, I've been teaching in Paris, but I only speak English.
Mm,
And I feel like if I could speak music, I could communicate with my students better, and they deserve that. Like
mm.
that's how I feel. I've felt that way for decades. I haven't done anything about it. So how strongly do I feel? Like who knows?
Yeah,
It
sure.
feels really strong to me, but I haven't sat down to study music theory either.
Well, and what's really interesting is how many musicians do you personally know that you could learn that from?
I yes, I teach mostly in private lessons, and very often I will try and I teach with metaphor quite a bit, which is a very Taoist thing to do.
Hmm.
And I'll very often offer to teach something in a musical way, spoken, but like drawing metaphors from music. But I'll do it in a way that I'll invite the student to correct me
Mm,
and
sure.
then educate me. Like,
Hmm.
no, no, I know you think that's a downbeat, but that's actually something else. That's a fizza. What do they call it? Um, I forgot, like da dum, but I don't know. Um, um, and then I feel like we're more connected now,
Hmm.
and I learned a little bit, just a little bit, and I think that they tend to find it valuable because I'm trying.
Yes.
Um, but I really feel like, boy, if I could be like an orchestral musician or something, I could relate at a really deep level with students.
Mm.
And I don't. It's interesting. Um,
It's never too late to learn.
I appreciate. I'm looking in the room at musical instruments. There's there's flutes and a guitar and a drum and a ball and a gong and like I'm thinking it through. um,
And for me as a percussionist, everything is a drum.
everything
Everything is a
everything
drum.
is a drum. Yeah.
And when you have drumsticks just around the house everywhere,
Yes.
everything's a drum.
Yeah. No. I think that's perfect. Um, yeah. I wonder if a like a music teacher would have insights. Like I'm thinking of somebody that knows about early childhood development or something.
Mm,
Like, would they have any insights into how music helps kids learn beyond just the music, whether it's social skills or communication or whatever, and how that might map to a martial artist who's teaching the same age group and
hmm.
interested in getting across the same stuff? Because of course, the martial arts teacher is not super excited about teaching you a sidekick and a spinning elbow. They want to teach you to, resolve your problems with your peer group and to look after your younger sister and to be healthy and all this kind of stuff and be polite. The kick and the punch is the secret is it's not terribly complicated. You
Yeah,
just got to
yeah,
do it a bunch. The complicated stuff is becoming a good human being.
yeah,
That's the really tough stuff. Um, and I think music has a way of allowing us to express emotion um, without filtering it through language,
Mm,
although it can filter through language. And similarly, it allows us to access somebody else's emotion without the middleman of language. And I think that there's a great empathetic bridge that can be built through music, which I think is very important to humanity.
mm.
You know,
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
Music has an incredible ability to evoke emotion in a way that not written word does for everyone.
yeah,
And I think
yes,
that's it, it can connect because even if you speak, you don't speak French and I only speak French, we can't communicate, but we listen to the same song, we both interpret it in our own way,
right,
you know,
exactly.
and
Yeah, and
can
we're also
evoke
going to be
emotions.
both moved by the same part of the song and
Sure.
both rocking out at this, like, because
Yep.
beyond language, we can connect to that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, I used to a friend of mine who's a martial artist out west. He would have this Senegalese blues in his tape deck, like his, and he'd always have house guests over. And when he came back, he'd note if it was in the deck or it had been taken out.
Mm.
And he said, if anybody kept this in, they're my kind of people. And if they took it out, they just didn't get it. I'm not inviting them back.
That's funny.
Which I happen to agree with because I found it and I just kept playing it. I'm like, this is the best thing ever.
That's funny.
So that was Ali Farkatore that he was playing, I think.
That was really funny.
Do
Well,
you use music in teaching at all?
you know
I
what?
mean,
It's
martial arts
Yeah,
teaching?
yeah. I knew what you meant, and you know what? I don't.
Yeah,
And it's weird. I obviously have nothing against it, but I know
sure.
instructors like Craig, for example, and Mark. They both, Craig Wareham and Mark Warner. They both will, on a regular basis, just teaching class. There's music playing in the background,
Right,
and for me, and this is perhaps bizarre because I am a professional musician.
right.
I don't. And when I was there and it felt bizarre to me. Not Please, audience, know that I'm not saying bad or wrong. It just was so different from
Yeah,
what I'm used to and what I usually do that it felt very bizarre to me.
yeah. Well, you know, it's easier for us to remember music than words,
Hmm.
like a speech, like, because a little bit of rhyme, a little bit of rhythm, or maybe I
Yep.
mean melody, I don't know what the word is, but these help to establish in the learning centers of the mind um, powerful markers. And
Absolutely.
the condition of mankind before literacy was so widespread was if it's important enough to get passed on, it must be passed on with poetry.
Mm.
And if we can include music and make it music and lyrics, so much the better. But all of the most important stuff to pass on, whether it's about our history, about our God, about our, how we hunt or whatever it is, this gets encoded in music. And the music is
Absolutely.
generally very stripped down. The lyrics are very stripped down because it needs to be accurately memorizable to basically everybody after you hear it a couple times,
Hmm.
right? And then rituals help us to return to it and renew and refresh it. But in martial arts, which many of the martial arts are kind of pre broad literacy,
Hmm.
they were also passed on in song or poetry.
Hmm.
They weren't passed on with CDs and YouTube links
Yeah.
or even written books. That's not going to do many of the people much good. You and I might value a book because I can look it up because I have that facility.
Hmm.
But back then, how do I get this across with music? And I can't say every single thing about it because now it's not a song. It's just a dictionary entry or an
Yep.
encyclopedia entry. And so I think there's probably something to trying to teach something, maybe something like Pinyin One or something fairly simple with an early song or poem and like try teaching that way, even though it's not how you learned or it
Mm.
feels bizarre or your teacher would never have music in class. That's fine. But you could have the students make the rhythm with their feet and their hands
Hmm. Hmm.
and you could say a few things to I think it's really an interesting probably fruitful study of how the mind and learning and engagement works.
Yeah.
Probably with kids, it works great, would be my
Hmm.
guess, you know. Um,
So
but
here's,
report back when you've done that, Andrew.
yeah. Now, audience, think about this for a second. So I'm 49 years old. I graduated high school in 1993. And tell me how many people you I mean, audience listening, you can actually write me and tell me, but like think about this for a second.
Andrew at whistlekick.com.
Yep. Uh I graduated high school in 1993. There was a song, hypothetical, I don't know what the song is, but there could be a song that I listened to a bunch that year.
Yes,
And uh,
sure.
I have never listened to it. It's 2025 now. I have not listened to that song since then, right? So we're talking 25, 30 plus years ago. And I could hear that song on the radio right now and still be able to sing it.
Yes.
Maybe not be able to get every single
But
word right,
almost all
but
of it, yes.
right, how many people learned to form in 1993, 30 years ago,
And
and
haven't practiced it.
have never done it since then, and then could just do it right now, right? The Are there
Yes.
people that could do it? Perhaps, but I think most of us would agree that's probably not going to happen. But with
Yes.
music, that can happen.
I wonder if also like when you learn a form, even if you don't learn it with music, record yourself saying it in a bit of a rhythm. Step
Yep.
to the left, middle punch, low block,
Yeah, yeah,
return
yeah.
180. And then like kind of play that when you're going to sleep so it finds you like music, maybe.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
wonder if
maybe.
that would be like a helpful way to lock it in. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I like that. I like that. Maybe we'll have to do some experimentation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Mushin Music
I love
Academy.
it. I love it. Sifu, thank you so much for coming on the show
Of
and chatting with
course.
me again. This was so much fun.
Of course. Hey, we found ourselves a cool little corner of consideration there just by chance. So I
Yeah,
liked
yeah,
it.
that was really cool. Audience listening or watching, what did you think of this? What do you have thoughts on taking a break and how you've handled students taking a break or music? Do you use music in your class? Let us know if you're watching on YouTube. Maybe comment whether you do or do not use music.
Yeah.
Um,
And if so, what's your favorite music?
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
what
How does
works
it work
best
for you?
for your class?
Yeah. And while you're there on YouTube, like and subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know about all of the episodes that are coming
Definitely.
out. And obviously, like I mentioned at the beginning, the subscribe button at whistlekickmartialartsradio.com to subscribe to our new newsletter. And then the last thing I'll mention is, Sifu Watson and I just entertained you for about 40 minutes or so. And
Probably 3 minutes of the 40 was entertaining, but we
maybe that's
tried. We
fair.
really tried.
We did. We tried hard. And you, the listener, didn't have to spend a penny on it. You got it completely for free. If you were to go to a comedy show, now granted, Sifu, this wasn't a comedy show, but if you're going to go out and enjoy entertainment, you pay for it. You give back so that the artists that are doing the things that you enjoy can continue to do that. And I would ask you that you do the same thing. Go to patreon.com/whistlekick to help support this show. We entertain you on a regular basis for free. And it would be really great if you could throw us a cup of coffee every month.
Perfect.
$5 a month. That's all it is. That's
Yeah.
all we ask. Sifu, again, thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
being here.
If it
Oh,
comes through, I don't know if it'll come through, but who knows?
yeah.
Probably not. Yeah. That's
I,
okay. You can
We'll
find me at
I'll put it.
somedayfarm.org.
We're gonna put it in the show notes so that everybody
Perfect.
can see how to get in touch with you and how to help
Thank you.
support you as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, and we'll definitely have to do this again.
Yeah, please.
So, I'll give a little brief, intro for new listeners what whistlekick is,
Sure.
and then my thought was just to hang out and chat and go from there.
Perfect.
My plan is to have no plan.
You're becoming a Taoist right before my eyes. I'm so proud of you.
I love it.